Hi everyone, it's Michael, and it's time for the June 2021 Orchid Collection Update. Again, I'm so sorry that this is coming late, but I was all over the US last month. I started off, where did I even go? I went to Denver, then straight to LA, straight to Kansas City, straight to Des Moines, Iowa, straight to Seattle, straight to New York City. So I just got home and I am tending to all my plants, and it's a beautiful thing. The plants are doing really, really well, and the more that I reduce my orchid collection, the more strongly I'm able to invest in my heavy hitters, because there are certain plants in my collection that really just are icons to me. I think of my Psychopsis, I think of my Sonara, I think of my Miltonia Sunset. There are certain plants that I just absolutely die for. And there are other plants that, now that I've gotten them stabilized and they're consistent bloomers, they're really beautiful, but they just don't necessarily make my soul sing. So I'm continuing to reduce my orchid collection because I do think that I've hesitated to add new members to the collection for a long time, and I could really be enjoying some incredible new learnings, but I'm avoiding that because I'm having such a hard time sustaining the baseline of the plants that I already have in my collection. So having said that, I am continuing to eliminate slightly. First of all, I want to say thank you to Michael McCarthy. He sent me an update on number 39 in my collection, my Zygonesia cynosia, which struggled under my care for a very long time. And it's in spike right now because he is a magician and he's wonderful. So that kind of got me thinking, and I asked him if he would be willing to take a few more of the plants in my collection that aren't necessarily thriving, but aren't necessarily doing poorly either. So Michael has kindly agreed to take number 18 in my collection, my Zygopedilum, so that's going to head over his way. He's also going to take number 33 in my collection, my Dendrobium tangerinum. This one just is not giving me any discernible signs of progress or destruction. It's just kind of hanging out. And then also I have number 53 in my collection, which I talk about so seldom, my Dendrobium Hibiki, which it's a lovely little plant. It just has never quite established or done very well. So I'm eliminating those from the collection. Beyond that, like I was talking about earlier, there are plants that are doing great in my collection that I'm not fully obsessed with. So I'm actually going to be adding all of those to the Orchid store. I will put the link in the description below, but all of them are available now. So that's going to be number 4 in my collection, my Everglades elegans, Oncostelli, Nancy Lee. I have my Oxalotary Prince Phalaenopsis, which is number 11 in my collection. Number 31, my Odontoglossum Wild Willie Pacific Bingo is going up, which is beautiful and fragrant. Also, I know I grappled with it for a very long time, but all of my Wedding Day Phalaenopsis, with the exception of one, I'm going to keep one of them, are going to be added to the Orchid store. And number 54, my my Brassolaeliocattleya Volcano Prince. It blooms beautifully for me. It's the one that has crazy expansive roots. But I feel like I have it represented in other ways, and that color story represented in my collection elsewhere. So that is going to be divided, and then those are added to the Orchid store as well. Now, I know I've been talking about this at length for quite some time, but I really think it's so important that you take inventory of your orchid collection, really identify the ones that make your soul sing, the ones that are just absolutely essential to your collection, and prioritize and care for those, and know that you are not obligated, just because a plant blooms for you, to keep it in your company. You're not obligated to be its parent forever, because there is someone who's going to be obsessed with that plant and who will give it a loving, fabulous home, potentially even better than the one that you're giving it. So don't be afraid to release your orchids. I think that has been the biggest lesson for me this year, and boy, oh boy, it's paying off dividends because, you'll see. A couple other quick updates for you. I am going to be evolving the structure of my monthly orchid collection updates because they run around 20 minutes long, and that's a long time even for me. So I think I'm going to try to keep these around 10 minutes long, and in order to do that, I'm really going to be focused and consolidate which plants I'm talking about. So that'll probably consist typically of the ones that are in bloom or the ones that are really struggling. Of course, if there's any strange anomalies or something really interesting happening, I will share that with you, but I'm going to try to really reduce the number of plants I spotlight in each monthly collection. And for that reason, I ask that you please be vocal. If there's a plant that you really want to see what's going on with it, if you really need to know, hey, I've been so curious, what happened to your Cymbidium after you repotted it back into sphagnum moss? Let me know and I will be happy to showcase that, but for the time being, I'm really just going to consolidate and focus. In regard to my system, I'm doing the exact same thing I was doing last month, so I'm flushing all of the orchid containers once a month. I'm watering with a dilute nutrient solution that is created using tap water, which again in San Francisco is very soft. It has some CalMag in it, and it has some Dynagro in it to offer, again, that dilute nutrient solution. I am misting the plants every single morning. I am sustaining a strong source of moving air with the overhead fan. and things seem to be going great. So having said all of that, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the plants that have something new, different, and interesting happening this month. Jumping in with number 3 in the collection, boy, if I did not understand the need for spiking before, I sure do now. This is my Sonara Aloha Sparks Halloween, and just look how stunning and gigantic it is. This spike is 4 feet tall, and the blooms are just absolutely so stunning. They have that beautiful buttercup orange. They have that nice burnt sienna red. But what's interesting about it is its root system continues to expand outside of the container. It really needs to be repotted. You can also see that the pseudobulbs desiccated while I was traveling because it did not get watered. It's drinking down its water reservoir really quickly. So I'm gonna get this repotted as soon as it's not in bloom anymore. But it's just doing phenomenally well. Now on to number 11 in the collection. This is of course my Psychopsis Mendenhall Hildos, one of the icons in the collection. Just doing so well, continuing to give us that beautiful samurai bloom over and over. There's the third spike producing another flower. But what's interesting on this one is it is now, for the very first time in the years that I've had it, starting to grow out of the container. It has been perfectly content and perfectly happy growing inside the container. But you can see that new pseudobulb developing. I think it's just gotten too big. This plant is very mature and very vigorous. So I think that's a super positive sign. I just have no idea how I'm gonna get this out of the container because it is so intensely root bound when it is time to repot. But I think that's a good problem to have. Moving on to number 16 in the collection, this is of course my Dapper Dots Nicolasa Tavares Catasetum. And what I think is interesting here is it is progressing so nicely. Of course, after dividing that gigantic plant, its momentum is slightly slower than it has been in previous grow seasons, but that's to be expected. But what's interesting is if I take you in up top, you can see on the old pseudobulb, on the old growth, there's a little something coming in. And I can't help but feel like that is a keiki. Now it's interesting because Jackson Lucas reached out to me because he bought a division of this plant and he had the same thing happening. I have never in all of the years I've had it, had this happen with this plant. So I'm not sure why it's happening or what exactly will become of it, but it is noteworthy. Moving along to number 25 in the collection, my Epidendrum Green Hornet. I just absolutely love this plant, and it is, again, 10,000% time to divide. It is just, it's gotten so expansive and so vigorous that it really just refuses to stay inside of this container, and for that reason, I'm having a very tough time keeping up with its water needs. The reason I haven't divided it yet is because, again, it just never stops blooming, and I do not want to interrupt that cycle, but I'm about to interrupt that cycle. It needs to be divided, and you can see the impact of it not being able to really metabolize water effectively because its root system is now so significantly outside of the container. Look at how much these new growths are beginning to stick on themselves. And it's like, I kind of have to manually liberate them. I really have to like help the leaves kind of unfurl from themselves. And that's not necessarily a positive thing. So I think that with regular access to water and increased humidity, this is gonna do fantastic. Moving on to number 26 in the collection, I just can't not show you this because I find it so charming. This is my Alisar Stellar. It has been struggling for so long, but just look at its intense will to survive. Look at that new growth coming in and maturing. So I think now that it has like a pretty vigorous new growth and it does have some new root growth inside of this moss, I'm gonna repot it because clearly this is not a great setup and there's so much dieback that needs to be removed. And that'll either kill the plant or it'll help it thrive, but it's just, this plant has really fought for survival and I am proud of it. Now moving to number 36 in the collection, this is of course my Fred Clark Yara After Dark SVO Black Pearl, and just look what a behemoth this is. I have to really take a step back so you can see it in its totality. It is gigantic. It has been so vigorous, and if I take you into the roots, look at how just well established this plant is. This mixture of sphagnum moss and leca has really done wonders, and the slow release fertilizer is certainly doing its job. This isn't even a mature growth yet, so I think it's gonna exceed its previous year's size if you look at that bulb. So I'm expecting some beautiful blooms off of this guy. Just wow, 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 wow. Look how big compared to my hand that leaf is. It's insane. Moving on to number 56 in the collection, this is my Miltonia Sunset, my very favorite orchid in existence. And this one has just given me such a beautiful display this season. It's the very first time it's been mature or vigorous enough to provide 5 blooms on each spike. So it's already dropped a few of them because it's already had a very nice cycle in bloom, but wow, just so, so beautiful. Now this one is experiencing a similar issue to number 25, which is that its root system is now growing so much out of the air that it's having a hard time metabolizing water, so it really relies heavily on those morning mists, which is not ideal. So this does need to be repotted. The reason it wasn't repotted in better contact with the potting medium earlier is because you can see these old pseudobulbs. So I'm really beginning to have a strong belief that sometimes it's beneficial, even though those old pseudobulbs are like battery packs, if they prevent you from effectively potting your plant at the right depth or in the right manner, sometimes it's more beneficial to remove them, because now I have to repot this pretty quickly after repotting it, maybe, I don't know, 8 months ago. And that's gonna set this plant back. So that's a learning curve for me, but still just such an absolute joy. Now moving on to number 59 in the collection. You know, I'm telling you that my catasetum types are just lit this season. We're looking at my Clowesia, Rebecca Northern Maccabi, and this one I watered prematurely and I thought that the new growth was gonna die, but it didn't. It's continuing to develop really, really beautifully. And what really surprised me is, without even noticing, it put out a second growth on the opposite side. This one has never done 2 growths at once for me before. And I don't know if it's doing it now because I divided the plant, but it seems much more vigorous than before. Because I did start watering prematurely, I'm super hesitant to do anything other than mist it right now. So misting is what I'm going to continue to do until I see, until I see the root system kind of peeking its way down here through the moss. I think that will be my indicator, because this one is very, very sensitive to premature watering, but doing great. And the last plant I'm going to show you today is my Epidendrum hybrid rose, number 67 in the collection. And this one is so incredible. This one has done so remarkably, and it's so strange because, I mean, that flower, this spike has been in bloom. I feel like this plant has never not been in bloom as long as I had it. I repotted it into water culture. It immediately went into bloom. It's just super vigorous and really, really easy to grow. So I recently took it out of water culture. I put it into full semi-hydroponics. You can see those roots drinking up the water. And I'm curious to see how that impacts the new growths. Also noteworthy on this plant is, look at all the keikis it's produced. There's one almost full-grown keiki, there's another almost full-grown keiki, and then there's another one down here. So I'm gonna kind of track and monitor how this progresses after the repot, but I am gonna do a video where I show you how I'm gonna remove those keikis, because these are ready to be full-grown plants for sure. Just a little quick closing commentary. Please let me know your thoughts on the new structure for the monthly collection updates. Let me know if you like them being a bit shorter and more to the point. Also, I do want to encourage you, if you want any of the plants I discussed today, please head over to michaelsorchids.com now. The last 2 times I added plants, they sold out in about 2 hours, which is amazing and unexpected, so thank you for that, but I just didn't realize that they were going to go so quickly. Thank you so much, as always, for choosing to spend your time with me. If you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. Be sure to support one another in the comment section, because I'm so seldom available to do so. Don't forget to click subscribe, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, friends.